Welcome back to Souhan Unfiltered at SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com, part of the Alive and Social Network. Today's podcast, we're actually putting this out on Tuesday, so Master, don't pretend it's Monday. We're pretending it's Tuesday today. My guest is Master Tesfassian, video expert and Viking beat reporter for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune.
Everyone hates Mondays anyway.
Exactly. Nobody wants to listen to it. So we're just going to pretend it's Tuesday. I do that every Monday anyway. Before we get rolling, thanks to my sponsors, The Local, Kieran's, and O'Gara's, all great Irish pubs with great people there. I spent some time Friday night at The Local, had a great time, or Saturday night, whatever. I never get my days right. I never get my days right. Exactly. But let's get to it here. Let's get to it. You can find all the podcasts at SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. Terry Ryan, Paul Molitor, Chad Greenway, all the best writers in town.
And then me.
And Master. You have the distinction of being my youngest guest. Because so many of the people I've talked to are like general managers or team presidents or older athletes or former athletes or writers who've been in the business for a long time. You get to be the young guy on the block. I think you're used to that, though.
Oh, of course. I mean, you go around and people are talking about how they remember things that happened before you even born. Actually, I think...
like every one of my columns.
I think on this day, actually, the Super Bowl was held here in Minneapolis in 91.
That's right. Yeah, I came to town in 1990, and the next year I was covering the run-up to the Super Bowl. And, it was... I'm not really happy they're bringing the Super Bowl back here. I don't really think the average person who wants to buy a ticket or the corporate person who wants to come here and entertain really wants to have to worry about weather and driving and staying inside our habit trail downtown. But I will say this. In 1991, when they had it here, Minnesotans tried so hard. They were so earnest about making it a good Super Bowl that all my buddies in the national media ended up praising it, saying they did a good job. So we'll probably have a similar experience this time around.
January 26, 1992.
That's right.
I was 8 months.
But you were reading our coverage.
Of course.
It was very important to you.
It was great coverage.
Yes.
Great coverage.
You got to go down, in fact, you took it upon yourself to go down to the Senior Bowl. We're going to get to talk about Teddy Bridgewater and the Vikings, the NFL, sports, music, some other stuff later. But tell me about the Senior Bowl. What was it like and what did you see down there?
Second time going. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, a lot of people are going to bash Mobile. Oh, you're going down to Alabama, all down there in the South, how they talk like this. But I always enjoy it just because it's a lot more relaxed. It's not necessarily run by the NFL, though they air it.
Right.
It's Phil Savage does a great job running the entire event. And just the entire week, you get a lot of access to the players, a lot of access to the coaches, the agents. I mean, everyone's still there. You don't have necessarily the hype that you have at, like, the Super Bowl or the Combine, which all NFL run. And they kind of have this kind of structure to it where everyone has to be at this spot at this time and this spot at this time. And then, after you're done, working late at night, you're just beat because you just don't want to go out. You've just been working the entire day because you got to get up at 8 a.m. too. So I enjoyed the laid-back Southern style of the Senior Bowl, just being able to meet other people, obviously, in the industry, and just, meet all the other agents and people within the industry. And also, I mean, there was some good talent this year compared to last year. There were some pretty good prospects that you can see out there, and obviously some that could be useful for the Vikings. So I always enjoy it. I feel like it's probably a must-go for any beat writer just to be able to experience that type of environment.
Yeah, when I was a football writer, I always found the off-season events to be the most illuminating. You had the best conversations. You got people when they weren't in the middle. I mean, football people in the grind of the regular season are just all uptight. It's just the way they are. You get them in the off-season, they tend to be more relaxed, a little more honest. And in baseball writing, the winter meetings in the off-season, the benefit of going to the winter meetings was not the stories you published that week. It was meeting people who could inform your coverage down the road. And frankly, it was sitting up in the bars, until 2 a.m. talking to guys off the record.
Yeah. And not only just from your team, but just other teams.
Yeah.
I mean, you just...
Oh, yeah, all around the league.
You get different perspectives that kind of help. You don't want them necessarily to dictate your opinion, but they help bring in different perspectives that you never thought of. So that way you can go back and think, oh, hey, well, I need to watch this guy more if this is the way the guy thought, just so I can do a better evaluation of him. And there's one thing that I'm doing, it's just watching a lot of these rookies, just because I never had a chance to watch them during the season. One of them is Derek Carr, just being able to see his progression. And there was a conversation going on in the bar of which one would you rather have, Derek Carr or Teddy Bridgewater. And, there was some actually strongly siding with Derek Carr. And, I was actually in the middle of this Derek Carr evaluation. I'm still going through it. So I didn't necessarily step up and say my opinion. All I did was say what I saw of Teddy Bridgewater. and not necessarily what I saw Derek Carr, because obviously that'd be very stupid of me to try and bring up a conversation with a guy I hardly even watched.
Well, I watched a lot of both of them last year. Obviously, I watched Teddy on an every game basis, as you did. And when I watched Derek Carr, I saw a guy I thought had tools, had the arm, but it was so hard to. I think with Teddy, it was pretty easy to evaluate. He was put in a terrible situation, and toward the end of the year, when he was actually given a real receiver in Charles Johnson and given some game plans that fit him, and once he'd kind of gotten used to the offense, and even as the Vikings kept saying, got stronger as the year went on. I thought he played great down the stretch, so it was easy to evaluate him for me. I thought he was a top 10 quarterback, top 10 NFL future quarterback, and he might have even improved his standing in my mind as the season went on. Derek Carr, I just saw a guy trying to carry a bag.
I think it was, as much as people bashed him, I think it was already known that Bridgewater was going to be a solid starter. It was just, could he show enough, and will he be a top 10 type of quarterback? And like you said, those last 5 weeks, the way that he's performing and carrying the Vikings offense, for once the Vikings don't go into an offseason looking at this draft and wondering who the heck are we going to draft.
I think the Vikings got really lucky in that when they needed a coach and when they needed a quarterback, they ended up finding guys who I think are very promising without having to be in line for the first pick in the draft or without even getting everybody's first choice in a coaching market. I mean, Zimmer was a guy who's been turned down by every NFL team as a head coach. Vikings end up identifying him as the right guy for them, even though he wasn't a great candidate in terms of national perception. And I like what he did with the defense last year. And then Teddy, they end up getting him at the 32nd pick. I think that's a great stroke of luck for a franchise that's not known for luck.
Could we say the tide is turning a little bit? I mean, with the Packers and how they had the most Minnesota Vikings type of loss of all time in the NFC Championship game. But, no, you're right, man. To get Zimmer, a guy who's very experienced, and one thing that you said that stuck out to me right when they were making the hire is that Spielman made this hire based off someone who's very similar to him, a Midwestern type of guy who will keep it straight up with you, and that you could see the similarities in what Spielman and Zimmer possess, even though Zimmer likes to take it to another level more so than Spielman does as far as how blunt he is with people. But you see the similarities in those two and how they work together. I think that's what makes a successful and cooperative general manager and head coach, is that they have to, as silly as it might sound, they really have to be very similar, because it might be narrow-minded that you think that way, because there are sometimes where a general manager and a head coach might be from two polar opposite scenarios, two polar opposite locations, but they just seem to work out. But in this type of situation, I think ideally you would look for a general manager to hire someone that's very similar to him so they can make these type of decisions, and it's not necessarily the head coach took that pick, the head coach told me to do this one, or the GM told me to do this one. Right. It's they go in knowing that whatever we do, we're both going to go out and say this was a cooperative pick, this was a cooperative signing. We're both in this together, so if he fails, we're both screwed. But if he does well, then we can both take the credit. And
their first round, they end up with collaborating on Anthony Barr, who I think Zimmer was highly recommending, and then they end up with Bridgewater for 32nd pick. They might have gotten their future.
Which we should credit probably Norv on that one.
And Norv should get credit on that one, yeah. And that was the great thing about them hiring Zimmer, knowing Zimmer would hire Norv. They knew they'd have a defensive expert and an offensive expert, which is, the way to structure it if you can. And then, so they, in one draft with Spielman working with Zimmer, they might have gotten their franchise quarterback and their franchise defensive player.
And it might be sometimes difficult for someone in a power like Rick Spielman to take advice from someone else and go the route, like, say, Norv Turner said, that we need Bridgewater when the Seahawks are up there and they need to trade back into it. But, I mean, you got to give them kudos on that as well, because it's not that easy in those type of positions, as we've seen from other organizations, the Cleveland Browns, how difficult it is to actually go off your board more so than your gut, or not necessarily your gut, but just kind of the pick that you want to take, and follow the popular trends or whatever it might be, to follow and trust your staff and the guys that they want to seek out, and being able to develop and produce those type of guys, whether it be in the draft or free agency. And we've seen that with Linval Joseph in the offseason, that being able to get a nose tackle who can eat up blockers at the defensive line, something that Zimmer desperately needed in his defense. And, as much as Captain Munnerlyn had a down season, he's still that type of nickel corner that this defense, and honestly, every team in the NFL nowadays needs, because that linebacker position is becoming less and less valuable outside of middle linebacker.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to do more Teddy talk, but first, tell me what you saw at the Senior Bowl in terms of individual talents you thought either might be a good fit for the Vikings or the Minnesota guys that are down there, including David Cobb.
Cobb, actually, a lot of people thought Cobb was the best running back of the week. I don't know if I'd say that. Honestly, I was very impressed with the Northern Iowa running back, David Johnson. I haven't seen much of him, but he's a lot bigger. He's about 6'1", I think 215. I had a few people tell me, hey, you should look out for this guy. He looks the part, and he was playing against some lesser competition, obviously, but the way his size and the way that he runs, it can translate very well. He does everything well. So David Johnson would be someone I'd look out for. Obviously, there was Amir Abdullah as well, but the Vikings already have a shifty kind of change of pace back already in Jerick McKinnon, so they can probably already eliminate him from the draft board as far as someone they want to get. I think in this draft, especially at running back, you want to get a guy like a Cobb, like a David Johnson, Todd Gurley. I mean, he tore his ACL during the season, but
he's a tremendous talent, though.
I still would take a chance on him in the first
Absolutely.
round. I wouldn't be surprised if you see someone like the Patriots or even the Seahawks, with the whole Marshawn Lynch situation, being able to use one of those last picks to draft a guy like Todd Gurley, or someone trading up to get Todd Gurley late in the first round. So it's a really good draft class for running backs, and also some guys in the trenches. I mean, there were some good guys in the trenches there in the game as well, and obviously there's a need here for the Vikings at left guard,
yes,
and possibly left tackle. I'm not sure how you feel on this, but I'd give Matt Khalil this at least the first half of this next season to prove me wrong and being able to show that he can be the guy that he was his rookie season. But if not, you've got to have someone solid as a backup in the wings, whether it be a young guy or a veteran. You need to have somebody else just in case the Khalil that we saw rookie season is long gone.
I kept on hearing from fans last year, you got to bench Khalil, you got to get rid of Khalil, you got to cut Khalil. You have to have the perspective that the front office has to a certain extent and realize you can't just cut a guy you took with the 4th pick in the first round, and not just that, but a guy who played really well as a rookie. We're not that far removed from him being worthy of the 4th pick. We're not that far removed from him having a Pro Bowl caliber season as a rookie. You can't cut every player who has a bad year. Now, like you said, they want to win next year. This was kind of a formative year. They want to win next year. And if Khalil is getting in the way of them winning next year, then you got to do something. Then you got to bench him. Then you got to find another guy. But you can't just give up on everybody who has a bad year. And maybe Khalil just had a bad year. Maybe he was hurt. Maybe he was hiding an injury. Maybe he was more hurt than we know, even with the knee. You got to give him another shot.
The biggest thing he said at the end of the season, which actually I think it was the last 3 games. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look back. It was either last 2 or last 3 games. Khalil actually was pretty solid in protection.
Yeah, he did get better.
Yeah.
It's just we didn't care by that point.
Exactly. The season was pretty much over. The playoffs were over, and everyone's looking forward to the next year and seeing how Teddy's Bridgewater's improving. But Khalil performed a lot better. He improved significantly. And again, it seems like with Khalil, there's always something like, well, I didn't do this, well, I didn't do that. I need to work on this. I think I'm doing better on that. The biggest thing he was saying about last offseason, he was focused so much on his knee and making sure his knee was strong that he didn't focus on technique. And you could see going into the season opener, he was still talking about how he was working on some things to try and figure out, what's right and what's wrong. And he was facing up against Robert Quinn, which he didn't give up a sack, a credit to that. But you can't go into a season opener still trying to figure things out. I mean, that's what training camp's for. He kind of was limited in OTAs, but that's what that time's preseason. That's what that time is for you to figure things out. You can't do that week 1 when everyone's relying on you, especially when you got the blind side of a quarterback to figure things out against one of the top pass rushers in the NFL.
Right. Back to David Cobb. I was really impressed with him as a college player. I think he's one of those guys. He's not going to light it up at the combine. I don't think he's going to run a 40-yard dash that makes scouts drool, but he knows how to play. He knows how to hit a hole. He knows how to run with a low center of gravity. He knows to bounce and spin off tackles. I love running backs who always get the extra yard or two at the end of the run. And Walter Payton once said, yeah, I rushed for a lot of yards, and some of them were spectacular, but I also twisted and turned and placed the ball ahead of me for an extra yard at the end of every run, and that's the difference between rushing for 3.5 yards a carry and 4.5 yards a carry, one of which is deficient, and the other which makes you a superstar. David Cobb runs that way. Do you think that Jerick McKinnon is the long-term answer to the Vikings, or do you think they need to look for somebody like Gurley or David Cobb or David Johnson?
He still can be the long-term answer, but you're seeing more and more now people are having two backs.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the Vikings will essentially need to do whenever they move on from Peterson, whenever that is, whether it be this offseason or next. You could still have Jerick McKinnon in your future along with another back that you draft in this class and build off that, because we're seeing more and more how teams are so successful with having two young, dynamic backs who can do a little bit of different things and complement one another. The biggest thing I'd say with Jerick is just pass protection. And you could see how much he's improved. Because
he got better.
The first time he did pass protection was last year in the Senior Bowl. He's never been asked to do it before. And, he's getting beat all through training camp where Anthony Barr is kind of swimming right around him and people are just running right over him. But you saw as time went on that he got better and better. And that was probably the most disappointing thing, I'm assuming, for him was beyond the whole entire, the injuries that with the low back issue that he had, was that he was getting better at that, and he didn't have a chance to finish the season strong and go in the offseason having improved on his technique there and pass protection, because he knows at the end of the day, if he can pass protect, he could be that third down shifty back for 10, 12 years. That's what's going to give him longevity, and whether it be with the Vikings or with someone else down the road. And I still think that you can have two backs and have them both in your future and pair them up with Teddy Bridgewater, and who knows where you go from there. But there is one thing that you said, though, that I do want to discuss.
What's that?
The Combine is so damn overrated.
Oh, it is. It's incredibly overrated. I mean, look at Bridgewater. He had a terrible Combine, he had a terrible pro day.
Yeah. And
then the second time, then they go down and work them out themselves, and Norv says, I can work with this guy.
It's like, I don't get what this whole entire process is
Well,
about, because you have so much tape on someone that you would think that would overweigh. Like you would assume there'd be a percentage of how much this thing's actually weigh. And when I'm hearing John Gruden last year say, if I ever had someone who had a bad pro day, I'd take him off my board.
That's crazy.
That's ridiculous.
It's absolutely crazy. And I can see David Cobb having a mediocre pro day, and I'd still want the guy, I always, whenever you're trying to figure out why something has become what it's become, to me, you always have to ask the question, who benefits? Okay, well, who benefits from the Combine being a big deal? Who benefits from people changing their evaluations of players after they stop playing games? It's the scouting industry, and it's the shadow scouting industry of the Kuiper and McShays and all those. It's ESPN. It's people who want to prove that they're expert scouts. They a lot of them can't really promote themselves as great experts if all they do is say, okay, I'm going to list everybody the same way everybody else does after watching the tape. They want to have something they can say, this is where my expertise lies, and you need me. And I think that's where the Combine comes in.
Mark Craig is the most anti-mock draft guy of all time. But he's helped me realize that a lot of this is also clickbait. When how much they shift, they got the mock draft version 10.0, 11.0, all this other stuff that's shifting around. Like right now, Todd McShay has Mariota as the number 1 overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's ridiculous.
I do too.
I think Winston should be the number 1 overall pick. As much as dumb as he is off the field, his talent otherwise says otherwise. I mean, he is a very talented person and already in an NFL scheme to where you could see how he's going to adjust to that. Whereas Mariota, you need to have an offensive coordinator who's going to be not necessarily be stuck on his old ways. He's going to have to form and mold around Mariota and that type of read option type of stuff. Whereas Winston, he could fit in all 32 teams right now, and he probably would be a starter. I wouldn't say it with all those teams, but he's a day one type of starter for the Bucks or the Titans.
Right. I mean, Winston's off-field stuff does worry me because I would say there were unforced errors. This isn't a guy who's put in a difficult situation.
Plays baseball too.
Yeah, this is a guy who screwed up all on his own when he had everything going for him. Mariota, I think Chip Kelly would love him. I'm not sure how many offensive coordinators or offensive-minded coaches would be dying for Mariota right now.
Imagine being a 19-year-old with that type of attention on you, though. And same thing with Johnny. What's going on now? He's telling the media one thing about how he's going to change and take his job more seriously. And next thing you know,
he's partying.
Season's over. He's in South Beach.
Yeah.
And people are thinking that's crazy, but to me, as a young 20-something as
well. It's natural.
It's like the season's over. I'm trying to have a good time. I mean, this point in your life is not going to be forever. And I understand he's living a job as well, but you can do both. Newsflash to all those Twitter people who always end up chewing out a certain player or, on Instagram or Twitter, whatever social media, him taking a photo and having a good time with someone. And then their response is always, hey, you spend more time in your playbook. If you're doing that, you'd be a lot better player. It's like,
now I'll have that'll be my Twitter voice in my head every time I read a stupid tweet from now on. I will think of that.
Because it's always some guy with some stash who's like 55. Just, this guy would have played a little bit better if he would have stopped playing around with all those women and going out and golfing and stuff. He'd be a lot better player.
The thing about working out as an athlete and working hard as an athlete. Now, I do think you need to spend a certain number of hours in the office watching film. That's a common denominator of all the good quarterbacks. But as far as working out and getting yourself in shape and working on skills, there's only so many hours a day you can do that before you hit the point of diminishing returns or even injury.
Exactly.
2-3 hours is about you can work out really hard for 2-3 hours, maybe less than that, and still have lots of time to go hang out with hot chicks. You can do it.
And obviously, I don't know Manziel's work ethic. I'm not with him 24/7.
I don't either.
And it could be an issue.
Yeah.
But it was just more so of a rant of things I always see about guys who are good and, developing as well. And I always end up seeing these type of comments somewhere. And it just bothers the crap out of me. I can't imagine what the players think. He's probably just like.
If I were a player, I would not be on social media. And I've talked to a lot of athletes, too, and we've had these conversations, and I always tell them, just don't get on there. Don't even get on there. All you're going to do is make yourself a target. It's not going to do you any good. Now, some people end up making it work. Glenn Perkins, for example, is big in social media. He's really good at it. He doesn't take any crap either. He will fire back if he feels he needs to. But he really does a good job. He promotes his team. He makes his teammates look like good, accessible guys. He promotes the University of Minnesota. He does a great job with it. But not that many people are good at it. Because, I have a temper, and if I were an athlete, I'd probably fire back if I were on social media. So I'd probably stay off of it.
Yeah. And us young folks like to tweet a lot, too. I don't know if you figured that out.
I have figured that out.
My Twitter account.
Yeah, I'm kind of a self-serving Twitter person, to be really blunt about it. So I'm going to guess, by the way you're dressed, that you might have gone to school somewhere in Arizona.
Oh, man. You think? Not the one down south. Don't get it confused.
You got the ASU hat on. You got the ASU shirt on.
It's out of jealousy because you're going to be down in the great state of Arizona.
Yes, I am leaving. I'm leaving Wednesday for Arizona. I love warm weather Super Bowls. It's for all the obvious reasons, and I'm fired up about it. I mean, I think this is a great Super Bowl. I mean, people look at deflategate. They look at Belichick being a jerk. They look at controversy. They look at Marshawn Lynch, doing stupid things or not talking to me. I think everything, all those elements, added into the fact you have two great teams. One long-standing winner that's trying to kind of finish off its dynasty with another championship. One rising power that's trying to prove that it's truly a great team by winning back-to-back, which hasn't happened since the Patriots in the mid-2000s. Fascinating contrast in personalities. Carroll, the rah-rah guy. Belichick, the jerk, Tom Brady, 6th-round pick who turned into the prototypical pocket passer. Russell Wilson, 3rd-round pick who turned into the prototypical modern mobile quarterback. I'm fired up.
I'm going to wait to see when people actually start talking about the game because, we've been so caught up in this whole deflategate thing, and it's getting to the point where it's just hilariously annoying. But like you said, I mean, these are probably two of the best teams of the last decade as far as organization speaking of, because just the way the Seahawks have built their organization up through the draft and been able to get all these cheap guys, 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounders, not necessarily first rounders. And when they have gotten first rounders like Bruce Irwin, people are like, what the heck? Who the hell's this guy? And then you end up seeing his talent and just thinking, oh, wow, everyone whiffed on that one. But just being able to see how they've been able to develop their talent, the Seahawks specifically, their defense, and being able to continue to run the ball, things that you don't see these days, being able to rely on Marshawn Lynch and no-name wide receivers necessarily. No offense to Baldwin. I'm sure he's going to listen to this podcast and chew you out on Wednesday. But they don't necessarily need some of the things that most other teams do. And the same thing with the Patriots and just how they function. I mean, They don't have any big name wide receivers either. They've got one hell of a tight end in Gronkowski, but also their defense. It's just like they end up plugging away and having a solid front four for the most part. But you end up wondering, like, who are these guys? Who are some of the guys on their team? But they end up making it work. And credit to Belichick and what he's been able to do for this entire his career in New England. This whole deflation thing is not really going to
it's not going to affect them at all.
People are writing this whole narrative about how much it's going to affect his legacy.
No.
That's a bunch of bull crap.
No, everybody knew that he was the kind of guy who pushed the envelope in terms of rules anyway. He was guilty in Spygate. This is just kind of more of the same, But it doesn't mean he's not a great coach. It means that he will try to find an advantage when he can.
And it sounds like everyone else is doing it too. If anything, he's terrible at cheating.
He's gotten caught twice in 10 years.
He's like that kid in middle school who wants to cheat off you, and he's like, looking right over the paper. And when the teacher's turn around, he's like, psst, psst, is that D? Is that D? And you're just like, man, you just have this feeling that you're going to get caught. Belichick that's all he has to do. He just needs to get better at cheating.
And he'll work on that this offseason. Yeah. He'll hold his own combine for it. Yeah. Let's get a little in your personal history. Let people know who you are. You are covering the Vikings for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. You're doing a lot of the videos. You and I will be doing a video shortly to set up the Super Bowl. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get interested in sports? How'd you end up here?
I grew up in Dallas.
And I worked there for about 6 years.
And grew up just outside of Dallas, Irving, Texas, which is where the old Cowboy Stadium is. And has been causing a bunch of earthquakes, apparently. That's for another show.
Everything Jerry Jones does causes some form of an earthquake.
Just something, God just angry at him for tearing down Cowboy Stadium. I don't know what it is, but I grew up there my entire life. Sports has always been a huge thing in my life. It's always been my escape of being able to, and I feel like a lot more people that come across sports is kind of their escape as well. Always wanted to play. I can recall growing up in elementary school during the summertime. We grew up in assisted living, Section 8 housing, and there was an elementary school across the street. And my friends would always play on the playgrounds there and stuff like that. And I always end up venturing off to the field all the way far, probably like half a mile hike, on the other side of the playground. And there used to be, elementary kids always over there playing their little professional football leagues in the city. And I just wanted to be a part of that so bad, man. I still remember I used to hand them like water and Gatorade and stuff like that, and just watch, because I wanted to play football so bad, but we didn't have the money to do it. And my dad honestly really didn't care. He didn't necessarily want me to get injured. He wanted me to focus all on academics. So finally, after a lot of begging, I got my chance sophomore year of high school. Played football.
Which high school?
Irving MacArthur High School.
Yep, I've been there.
That was a disaster. I didn't really. I knew the game, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I always had good hands, so I wanted to play tight end. But this was during the era in Texas where everyone's playing spread offenses,
Yep.
so there's no tight ends. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll be receiver. I was just like, hadn't hit my growth spurt yet. It was probably like 5'5", just overweight, just chubby, always the slowest person down the line. But I had good hands.
You know what image I'm getting? Lavelle E. Neal trying to play high school football.
It was a disaster. And what ended up happening the day before the game on a special teams drill, I didn't tear my knee necessarily, but I ended up hurting my knee, going crutches. It's kind of hard to explain what exactly happened because we didn't really have insurance. We didn't have insurance at the time, but I ended up seeing a few clinics and doctors and stuff, and they told me I had patellar tendonitis in my knee. So it was just difficult doing rehab as well, just because it was hard to get like a ride back and forth from the house to practice. I still remember to make sure someone else was eligible on the team. He was a good friend of mine. He'd give me a ride, but in the car ride over, I'd do his algebra homework.
You mean sometimes athletes cheat to be eligible? That's
so?
shocking.
Oh, man.
Absolutely shocking.
Yeah, breaking. I'll write that story for the Sunday story.
I know. I think we need that on StarTribune.com immediately.
And then after that, it was pretty much a sign. I felt like that my football career came to an abrupt end. But I was in this kind of journalism, I don't want to say journalism program, but this is a media program in high school. And I guess I was just so naive that I didn't realize until my junior high school that people actually get paid to talk about sports.
Well, at least we're trying.
Yeah. Because
we're efforting.
What I always saw was it was just former athletes, and I was like, what the hell they need money for? They're probably just doing it for free.
Right.
So end up figuring out I need to get out of state, go to Arizona State because it's just such a huge market. as far as and having a school there with a huge market. I feel like it'd be a good opportunity to have a lot of internships and being able to network with a lot of people. And it worked out to just that exactly that, how it did, how I thought it would. So, I grinded those 4 years and ended up coming here 2 years after that. So it all worked out somehow, and regardless of the 6 figures in student debt I'm in, but it's been
modern life, man.
It's been a crazy journey, man. I definitely have enjoyed it, and excited to see what happens here from here on out, man. There's still a lot of time to grow and learn and continue to improve on just to see where journalism goes at.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be fast. 2 things that really fascinate me that dovetail with this conversation. One is where the NFL will be in 10 years. And 2, where NFL coverage and our business will be in 10 years. Because, the NFL. The sad thing is, and I had this conversation with people in a bar the other night. They're saying, well, I like the fact that if I want to read something, I'll just go online, click on what I want, and read it. Yeah, that's great. That's convenience. We all crave convenience in all aspects of life. The problem is, an actual printed newspaper informs people much better. And the whole idea of having a newspaper, the reason you have newspapers is not to cover sports. That ends up driving the profits of the newspaper. It's a necessary thing. It's a part of life. It should be covered. But newspapers exist to keep people educated about government, world events, local events, national events. So there's a watchdog looking over the guy in the city council who wants to screw you out of your money. That's the whole function. And so if all you do is go on and click on your NFL story and don't read any of the rest of the paper, that's not good for society. When you actually pick up a printed newspaper, you end up seeing 18 headlines you wouldn't look for on the internet. You end up reading 4 stories you wouldn't have read on the internet. That's what bothers me about going online.
Speaking on that, very few people I know about what's going on in Nigeria right now.
I know.
And that's because exactly what you're saying. It honestly, it frustrates me even more that I have to go through Star Tribune site and I have to search it up because I can't find anyone on the front page.
Right.
It's just not generating any interest. But to me, it's larger than whatever happened in France. You're talking about, possibly thousands of people being killed. As far as, and this is all on the verge of the largest election in the continent of Africa, upcoming. And just no one cares. No one really cares about what's going on there, and it's sad. It really is sad because you would think people would be more aware of their surroundings and what's going on, and it's not necessarily what you want it to be in your little small bubble.
Right.
Which makes it, this whole entire, internet phase also makes it difficult to talk to people because they're not really informed on the situation, but then they Angelina Jolie is adopting Africans. We do care about that.
That's right. Well, that can make it on the cover of People, and People's all you really need to know.
Exactly. That's all I read anyway.
Yeah. Oh, man. I went to Missouri. And I remember before I went to Missouri.
We should note that we did not plan this, but you're also wearing your Missouri jersey.
I did, and you're wearing your Arizona State stuff. Yeah, that's very true. I wore my Missouri shirt because I don't mind sweating through it. Now, very steamy. Oh, we both get hurt.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, and both non-contact injuries too. So I'm planning on going to Missouri. I'm in St. Louis. It was an easy choice for me. I'm going to school in St. Louis. I'm interested in journalism. Missouri's 2 hours down the road, in-state tuition. It's not like I did this national search for the best journalism school. It was just that was easy.
It actually is one of the best.
And yeah, it is. I think. Although that's one of those other perception things that cracks me up. People, arguing, my school's the best. Well, how do you know? You only went there. You didn't go to 100 schools and now you're telling me the best. You went one place. You're telling it's the best for no other reason than you want to believe it's the best. Drives me crazy. So I go to Missouri, and I remember Playboy magazine used to do this.
Wait, what?
Playboy magazine. Yep, this is the internet. We can bring up Playboy magazine. Playboy magazine always did a yearly survey on the best college party towns. And I remember that year they listed the top 10 party schools, and then they had a little blurb at the end saying we didn't include Missouri in the survey because we didn't want to include the professionals along with the amateurs. So Missouri is known as a great party school. My personal experience, having traveled to Phoenix, having been around Arizona State, having talked to Arizona State grads like Chad Hartman from WCCO, is I'm guessing Arizona State is the best party school in the country. That's the way it feels to me.
What's crazy, I didn't start drinking until I was 21 and still had a ball. It was, I remember when I turned 21, I was just going into my senior year. I was interning at the Seattle Times in Seattle.
Oh, I didn't know you interned there.
Yeah,
that's cool. Great city. I love that
gosh.
city.
I'm actually last night I was thinking about that. I'm dying to go back to Seattle.
It's a great city.
It's amazing. But I come back down and all of a sudden my buddy's like, "Oh, you're 21 now. Let's go." That year, oh my gosh! Whenever I die, I just remember I could have lived about 3 years more, but that year took about 3 years off my life.
But it's a trade that some of us are willing to make. You know.
For that 4 years of my life? Oh, absolutely. I'll trade those 3 years any day.
I've been a lightweight my entire life. I was the guy who went out to party and could not keep up drinking with all of his buddies. But God, it's amazing how much some of my college. I played lacrosse at Missouri, so I hung out with a bunch of jocks.
And you're still lightweight?
Oh, I'm still lightweight. I've always just inherently. I think it's actually because I've like basically some congenital sinus problems. So if I drink 3 beers, my head's going to hurt for 24 hours. It's a given. It's an automatic. So I've always been a lightweight in exactly that way. It's not that I couldn't drink it. It's that I knew that every beer was going to add 6 hours of pain onto my next 48 hours. But good Lord, some of the people I knew they could drink. And also, a lot of them are from St. Louis, which is a beer town. It is a Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch town. They drank beer at the age of 18 like it was water. And they drink it all day. I couldn't do it. I don't know if that's good or bad that I couldn't do it, but I couldn't do it.
I had buddies in college, and these are still some of my best friends that I still talk to. I still remember I'd wake up on their couch or something like that. We went out or something. They'd wake up at 8 or 9 a.m., just crack open a beer or take a shot or something. They're just like, let's just go back at it again.
I know. Some people are like that, and most of them are buddies of mine.
We do a Vegas trip every year during March Madness, and we look forward to it every year. We have this group chat going on where we call ourselves the Degenerates, and we're always just thinking about this March Madness Vegas trip. And I can tell you those 4 days are you probably get about 2 hours of sleep. You're out till 3 a.m. You wake up about 6, 7, just because you got to get ready and prepare for these upcoming bets. It probably is around 8, to be honest. It's about 8 we wake up, 7 or 8.
AM or PM?
AM.
I'd probably sleep till PM.
Yeah. And it's just this process where you're just drinking out all night. You're betting on all these games throughout the entire day. You go out just clubbing, going poker table, going out and having a good time. Go back to your hotel 3 a.m., wake up 7 or 8, crack open a Red Bull, and just do it all over. Once Sunday night comes around, we're just like zombies. It is exhausting, but for some reason it never gets old. We've done it. I think this will be year 3 or year 4, and we just look forward to it immediately right after we fly out of Vegas. We're just like, all right, well, time to book next year. It is.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun. Let's mix in a little more football. Teddy Bridgewater. You were saying all along last year that you loved him as a college quarterback. You loved him as a pro prospect. Did you get to know him at all last year?
A little bit. He's really quiet.
He is.
He is. And I've tried sometimes to kind of spark up conversations with him specifically. Just talking about people, some people that he played with at Miami Northwestern, which is a historic and high school as far as the program goes, a very powerhouse down there in Miami. So I would always try to spark up questions for him on that kind of stuff. But for the most part, he was really reserved. The biggest thing that stuck out to me, though, was it seemed like he was always reserved in the locker room and kind of stayed to his own. But something kind of clicked once he started gaining his confidence and started playing better. All of a sudden, you see him on Friday, which is like the really relaxed, loose environment in the locker room as they're just all eating after practice. And you're seeing Teddy Bridgewater dominate this corner of the locker room that's always the loudest, always cracking jokes during that time of period. And Teddy Bridgewater's just making them all die of laughter. And when I saw that, it was like, it just kind of clicked. It was, this Teddy's starting to, I don't want to say necessarily gain control of the locker room, but you could see that he's really owning this. It's one thing when you're the starter or the quarterback where for the most part, I've got this locker room, but there's this point where you've got to prove it, and you've got to show that you're the leader. And at that point, you could kind of see that not only was he just the leader on the field, but also kind of off the field. He could just be one of the guys, and being able to interact with one of those guys and not necessarily have to be in a zone and being this kind of serious-natured Teddy Bridgewater that we always see. So that was to me probably the most striking thing of everything that he's done, and accolades, stats-wise. That, to me, 5-10 years down the road, I'm going to remember that moment. Yeah,
and I heard the same thing from a lot of behind-the-scenes Vikings employees are saying, hey, Teddy will sit in the training room and just crack people up. He's got a wit, and people focus so much on arm strength. And I think Teddy's arm is strong enough, but it's going to get better. His mechanics got better during the season, which just never happens in the NFL. Usually your mechanics go south as you get beat up a little bit and you get sore. His mechanics got better during the season. I see a guy who's smart, who's a leader, who has been tremendously productive at different times in his career already, who's tough enough and will get tougher physically, and who has the personality of a leader. And we know from talking to Zimmer and Norv that he puts in the hours studying too.
And for someone that young to get all that, and he just turned 22 recently in December. The arm strength, like you said, is going to come. He can develop that as he gets stronger and gets in the weight room and stuff. But to be that polished at 22, I don't think people really understood that going through the draft process. And it seems that now that he's having all the success, a lot of people are like, well, I thought Teddy Bridgewater was going to be a fine young quarterback in the NFL. But you don't see as many naysayers as there was, throughout the whole process. And I guess that might be just how the draft process works and just how people never want to say that they're wrong. But when I watched him, you could tell. I mean, he was in this NFL type of style system, and you could see the throws that he was making. You could see the decisions that he was doing.
And he beat really good teams. Yeah. He beat teams with much more talent.
Florida,
yep. And Miami the year before.
Yeah, he killed Miami.
Yep.
That's when I knew he had a personality, because he beat them through like I believe it was a Louisville school record on them in that bowl game. And he does a little slash throat thing. And then afterwards he apologized about it when he was asked about it. But you could kind of see, because he's played with a lot of those Miami guys on that team, and actually decommitted from there once Randy Shannon was fired. But that's when I knew he wasn't this boring guy that people kind of played out to be. He's got this personality, but he does a really good job of keeping it away from the public. You won't see that stuff on Twitter. You won't see him post on Instagram, him with about 3 or 4 models in Vegas or South Beach or whatever it might be. And honestly, it's probably not even his style to begin with.
Right.
But you won't see any of that, because he knows when to use that, and he knows that it's not that intimate when you blare it out with everyone else. It really isn't that personal.
No, it's like Kevin Williams said when somebody asked him recently about being on Twitter and social media. He said, why would you want everybody to know your shit? And that's exactly right. Why?
Yeah.
What good is it going to do you?
And you could see, especially when you ask media questions, he's not going to give us a damn thing.
No.
He's so polished when it comes to that, and I don't blame him.
No. It's really not. It's not his job to entertain us.
Yeah.
If he happens to entertain us, that's a bonus, but it's not his job.
Yeah, and he does a great job of being able. I don't even want to say give us just enough, but he knows the company line. He knows what he has to say to not get himself in trouble, but still being able to be positive in regardless of every situation. Every now and then, like post game, he'll be honest, and he'll be able to tell like when he made a mistake and stuff like that, which I do appreciate. But being able to write a feature or a piece or something like that on him, you're going to have to work damn hard to being able to just scratch the surface on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like the fact that he and Zimmer both are willing to say, okay, I screwed that up. Or, whether they say it on Sunday night or after they look at the film, hey, I screwed that up. I always tell people that is the best strategy you can ever teach an athlete or a public figure, is just to, if you screw something up, admit it right away. It's a one-day story. People will actually pull their punches and appreciate the fact that you're honest about it. Where when you become defiant about a mistake, that's when it turns into a huge story, because then there's back and forth, and then there's the people. I hate the word critics, but let's say critics, just for shorthand, who are going to try to prove that they're right, and it becomes a war. It's so much easier to say, screw that. And I think Teddy also is the kind of guy who sometimes says I screwed up when somebody else screwed up, just because it's easier for him to just take it on himself.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But, I mean, wasn't that a lesson we all learned in elementary school?
Mm-hmm.
When we would try to lie to our parents. I guess I learned that a lot of times. You lie to your parents, and you're like, no, I didn't do that. And next thing you know, that hand spanking could have turned out to be a lot more. And I probably won't say because I don't want my parents to be arrested. But it was more so than just a little time out in the corner once you started lying a little bit more. But, it makes so much more sense to just being able to confess and admit. There's just so many prideful people when they get in that type of situation. They feel like that has to be their persona. They can't be wrong because if they are, people are going to hold that against them. No, we're not.
No, we'll move on.
You're human.
There are other stories.
We know you're going to fuck up.
Yeah.
So go ahead and just say you fucked up and move on.
Absolutely. Speaking of child discipline, what's your guess?
Oh, damn.
What's your guess as to what happened? I don't actually want to rehash the Adrian Peterson stuff. It's been done enough. What I'm curious about is projecting the future. As an opinion writer, I've just kind of been stuck ever since this all began with, hey, they were going to have a tough football decision to make this spring no matter what happened. Even if Adrian had stayed healthy and had stayed unsuspended and had had a great year, they're still going to have a mathematical problem to solve this spring. And as much as they want him as a football player, I think they want him at a certain price. And I don't know what that price is, and I don't know if Adrian's going to be willing to accept that price. So my feeling has been the odds are against him returning. What's your view of it?
I think you want to bring him back, even if it has to be, $3 or $4 million more than you would like. You pair him up with Teddy Bridgewater being a second-year quarterback, being able to take some of the pressure off. You draft a young running back who can kind of wait in the wings, learn from one of the best in the NFL, regardless of what you think of what he did on or off the field. He still is. If he comes back next year, he's still going to be a top 2 or 3 running back in the NFL. And you can't lose talent like that when you still have them. And Rick Spielman said it best when he spoke to reporters about 2 weeks ago. Every time people doubt Adrian Peterson and think he's going to have a bad season, he always proves everyone wrong. And he kind of expects Adrian Peterson to have a good season next year. But I still think it would be wise for the Vikings to work it out. If anything, I'd probably look out. Does Adrian even want to be here?
Well, that's a big part of this. If the Vikings come in and say, okay, we've determined that what we can afford to pay you, even if we love you, what we can afford to pay you is $8 million. That's when I think Adrian Peterson might say, well, I don't want to play for that. Why don't you trade me to Dallas, where Jerry Jones will be happy to pay me $10 million. That's been my conspiracy theory all along. Is that
Jerry's kind of stalling out this DeMarco Murray thing here.
Oh yeah, he's basically treating DeMarco Murray like he wants him to just leave. And I think Jerry Jones would love to have Adrian Peterson. Jerry Jones loves big names. He likes paying lots of money to big names. And the way they ran DeMarco Murray into the ground, we all did those stories when Adrian had his 2,000-yard season. We all looked up the history of NFL running backs with a certain number of carries or a certain number of yards in one season. They all fall off the next year. All of them fall off the next year. Some of them are done for. Sean Alexander was pretty much done as a running back after he had his big year.
Unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
Just how he dropped off. That was incredible.
Yeah, and as great as DeMarco Murray was this year, the Cowboys treated him like they know exactly that's the deal, that he's not going to be able to bounce back and be as valuable next year. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I guarantee you Jerry Jones would like it to happen. That he ends with a fresh Adrian Peterson instead of a beat-up DeMarco Murray.
You look at the situation, though, with the Vikings, and you need outside of Greg Jennings, and as far as like the weapons go, and you can include Kyle Rudolph if you want to, though he was injured for most of the season. They need those kind of vets, though, in that room. And considering how young this roster is, you still need a guy like Peterson. I still think someone who's been around that long could still teach Bridgewater a thing or two here as well, along with Castle. And not only that, but also continue to teach McKinnon. And, if they do draft a running back or whatever happens in that scenario. But I still think Peterson still has another good year in him. And I feel like you can sense the Vikings fan base, as critical as they were when this whole story first came out. They've kind of lessened their stance as time's gone on partly because of Roger Goodell and how much he's kind of
he ended up making himself the bad guy in a lot of ways,
and just also the acceptance of how I honestly think Peterson did not think he did anything wrong.
Oh, I agree with you, and I disagree with him, but I do agree with you that he thought he was just being a Texas dad.
And can I say something here as well?
Yeah.
It taught me essentially not to do that as well, because I was kind of raised in that similar manner as well. And when you see that around you, that's how you think about disciplining your kids as well. And in the future, that's kind of how I always thought to raise my kids as well, just because of the discipline that I got and how you think about where you're at and how much it worked out. But if it wasn't for this, I don't know if I would have ever thought that it was wrong, to be honest. Just because it's just so common down there. It really is.
I think it was Clarence Hill, who covers the Cowboys for the
Hill, my boy, man. I love him, man.
Fort Worth Star-Telegram, which is the paper, my first major paper I worked at. I was a grunt, but I worked there. I think he came out and said the same thing, that seeing, reading, because if you read up on the psychology of child discipline, as I did, I'm sure you did, and Clarence did, you realize that what they say is, yes, you may get a desired result from beating your child, but you will damage them in many ways in the same process, and you can get a similar immediate result with non-physical punishment that doesn't damage people psychologically long term. I
will say this about me. I was a fool back in the day, so that whole timeout crap and taking away my phone shit, that was not working. That would not work. There were some times where I just needed that belt, and it sounds terrible, but I was wild growing up. I really was, and if someone told me a timeout or something like that, I just thought of it as just like a corny kind of way of I didn't even really think of it as discipline, because I would just sit in the corner and just kind of talk to myself and stuff, and just I didn't see anything that I could learn out of it. I really didn't, because it was only like 15 minutes or anything like that. But I could see how this is wrong, and if anything good came out of this, it's that people like me and other people down south, the ones that aren't ignorant and the ones that kind of will remain objective about the whole scenario, can learn from this and think about different ways of raising a child. Obviously, I don't have any yet, but being able to know this now, I'm glad it's a lesson I don't have to learn down the road.
Right. I think one of the interesting things about the way things developed was what so many Viking fans didn't want to have happen, which is Adrian Peterson missing the entire year. Actually, I think is going to play into the hands of Peterson and the Vikings, in that so many of the people, such a high percentage of people who were offended by what Adrian did and thought he should be punished, now can say, okay, yeah, he was very severely punished, perhaps even more than I would have punished him. So now really the story's over with. Whereas if they suspended for 3 games or something, I think we'd still be talking about it.
People are still protesting. PETA people are still protesting Michael Vick.
Yeah, that's a good point. But there is always the
nucleus of just how big it is. Those people are going to be gone.
Right.
It's more like the electrons, little people kind of.
Yeah, there's always going to be the electrons. Yeah. Let's talk a little music, because I went out to Bunkers on Saturday night and I saw a Prince cover band, Chasing the Ovation. They're very good, and they called Jelly Bean Johnson up onto the stage, and Jelly Bean Johnson gets up there and plays. It was like one of the great guitar sets I've ever heard. It was like Hendrix. It was like Hendrix meets Stevie Vai. I think he was just killing it. And I tell you, Jelly Bean Johnson, you didn't know who he was. I was really wondering, given the history of great music in Minneapolis, if you were a Prince guy or a Morris Day and the Time guy.
I was a Prince guy, and that happened, I would say, about 4 years ago. That's when I first really got into Prince. Because, I knew of Purple Rain, and I knew of, kind of all the classics that he had. But I think about 4 years ago is really when I really dived into his collection. And, man, he can play the guitar, man.
Oh, yeah. He's incredible. And if you ever want to check out Prince at his best on guitar, there was some Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction where he's up on stage with a bunch of great guitarists, and he ends up playing the solo during While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which is not a crazy guitar song, and he just goes crazy, and just everybody else on the stage is looking like, okay, I don't really want to play guitar anymore. I really don't want. And he did it with just a beat up old Hohner style Telecaster, and just nailed it. He is one of the great geniuses of our generation.
I'm mainly a hip hop guy. That's what I listen. I think my Spotify last year had me like at 95% or 96% hip hop that I listened to off Spotify last year. But guys like Prince, you can always appreciate someone who can play the guitar that way. And other guys like Johnny Cash, I really appreciate as well.
That's good to hear. I think Johnny Cash was the first rock and roller.
He was
the first. He was the first badass punk rocker. Basically, he was a punk rocker with an acoustic guitar.
Definitely.
And that's why I love Social Distortion, because they play basically. If Johnny Cash were alive today, he'd be in Social Distortion.
it was more difficult for me growing up to branch out of that kind of stuff because no one around you listen to that kind of stuff. So mainly for me, I mean, I listen to a lot of like Southern hip hop. That's my style because.
Well, give me a couple artist names that I might have heard.
I listened to growing up.
Yeah.
Oh man, Scarface. He's pretty much.
I've heard of him.
Scarface is he's like the king of Texas. Someone who's really underground that like people from Texas know, but he really hasn't blown up around the U.S. But he's been around for like the last 15 years. His name is Zero.
Don't know that one.
He's to this day, man. He could do a concert. People will know his words verbatim. If anything, Scarface and Zero, like their loyalty fan bases. Zero might have a bigger loyalty fan base in Texas. Underground Kings, Pimp C, UGK, Bun B. Those two are, man. That was the backdrop of my childhood, man. I could still remember. I still remember there was my neighbors. They would always. That's why I have subs in my car, and it's because everywhere you go, people are just banging music everywhere you drive. And I still remember waking up, like it could be like at midnight, it could be at 2 a.m. My neighbors would be rolling by and just banging like UGK or some from the South, and it used to piss my mom and dad off. But for me, I was like, oh yeah, that's that one track. Oh, he just out there jamming, you know. And you just kind of grow up thinking, man, like I can't wait to roll down the windows, just kind of bang the block out is what we call it, you know what I'm saying? And people might hate it, you know what I'm saying? Like they, because it disturbs the neighborhood and stuff. But and that's the funny part about living here in Minneapolis now, because I'll go around banging the block out and people kind of look at me and roll their windows up and make eye contact. I laugh every time I see that. I laugh so hard, man. I wish I could record that, man, when it happens.
Oh, you should. That'd make a great YouTube video. It really would. All right, we wrap up the show with some quick hitters here. Favorite TV show?
Martin or The Wire? Martin Lawrence show. Yeah.
I like Martin Lawrence, but I love The Wire. We were talking about at the bar the other night because we're watching the Prince cover band.
You sound like you're at this bar for a long time.
I actually was. Yeah, and that's not like me. I don't have much stamina, but I hung in there. We were talking about the David Chappelle Prince making pancakes. It's like the greatest.
Oh.
It is the greatest episode of all time.
You like some grapes?
I love that.
Those 3 shows I could watch.
Oh.
Actually, I was watching Martin last night while everyone else was watching that shitty-ass Pro Bowl.
Yeah. I didn't watch Pro Bowl either. We actually caught up on Justified and Downton Abbey, which I actually kind of like a little bit. Favorite movie?
Pulp Fiction.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Pulp Fiction.
I don't think I'd make that my favorite, but it's up in the top 20 or something. And it's just sheer crazy entertainment.
I'm not a big movie guy, though. I've been meaning to watch some. I was actually thinking about watching last night, but I was talking about my buddies. I think I watched 4 movies while I was in college with those guys, and I think 3 of them was because I brought a girl along. So, yeah. I'm not big of a movie guy.
Okay. Favorite artist, music artist?
UGK, Underground Kings.
Okay, cool. And do you have an appreciation for kind of the? Have you gone back in history? Have you listened to Motown? Have you listened to old R&B stuff?
I was listening to Bootsy Collins this morning, man.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh man, you talking about someone who can play, man?
Yeah,
Bootsy.
Yeah,
I love Bootsy. Man.
There are a lot of Collins who can play the guitar. I actually got one of my first favorite artists was B.B. King, and I think I saw him live like 15 times between high school.
Remember we talked about this
college?
A month ago.
Yeah. High school. He came first. He was always around Missouri, touring either through St. Louis or Columbia. I saw him when I first moved up here a lot. I saw him when I remember the first time I saw him. He stood and did the whole show on his feet and sounded great. By the end of the stretch where I saw him a lot, he was sitting the whole time. He just he wore out a little bit. But I think I was telling you, the 25th anniversary Rock and Roll Hall of Fame concert is amazing. And Stevie Wonder, Smokey Robinson, and B.B. King. And basically Stevie Wonder is like playing a long set, so he brings B.B. King on for 2-3 songs. He brings Smokey out for a song. And then he brings Sting out, and they do a mashup of Higher Ground and Roxanne. And it's like one of the great concert moments of all. And then Bruce Springsteen, my guy, brings up Sam from Sam and Dave, and they do 2 songs together and just kill it. Just love it.
I didn't know any of those songs you just named.
Okay, well, you got to check them out.
I do know who the artists are.
You got to check them out because that's some great stuff. Final thought on any topic you want.
I'm pretty sure I won this argument. So
you did.
We'll leave it at that.
Because this has to be. Anytime 2 sports journalists talk, it has to be a debate, and somebody's got to keep score someplace. So let's say you won 82 to 82-18. Let's give the technical knockout to Master Tesfasian.
Post-game press conference here in about 10
That's
minutes.
right. And I'm not going to speak to the media.
Oh, both teams
I'm
play
done.
hard, though.
I'm not going to. I'm
You're not?
I'm not going to speak to the media, and I will accept whatever fine comes down from Roger Goodell.
You going to grab your crotch, though?
Oh yeah, and I'm going to wear gold shoes too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That's how I roll. Thank you to Master Tesfasian for coming by.
Thanks for having me, man.
This is Souhan Unfiltered. You find all the podcasts at SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. Thank you to my sponsors, The Local, the Great Irish Pub on Nicollet, downtown Minneapolis, Kieran's Irish Pub, right across from Target Center. It looks like it's under construction. It's not. Still open. Go in there and have a beer. Great fire pit.
Love that place.
Yeah, it's a great place. And O'Gara's, my friends Danny and Chris, over off Snelling and 94. A great old Irish pub where we might actually play some music at some point. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.